Welcome to How You Livin', a transformative podcast featuring best-selling author, inspirational speaker, and minister, Dr. Rick Rigsby. And now, Dr. Rick.
Hello, friends. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to discuss the value of failure. Yes, you heard me correctly. There is a value associated with failure. I don't think we talk positively enough about failure. Most institutions don't tend to focus on it or even allow space for mistakes. It's all about results. It's all about success. However, more organizations are realizing something that competitive teams and individuals have long believed, and here it is. There is no sustained success without failure. Consider these comments from former Coca-Cola CEO and Chairman Muhtar Kent. Kent said, and I quote, "If I would have done anything differently in my 36-year career, it would have been to create an atmosphere which allows mistakes, as you learn so much from mistakes. We are not bold enough to take enough risks, and risk is critical for success. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Just don't repeat them. Celebrate failure, not just success. It makes a great organization," end quote. Whoa! Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Celebrate failure, not just success. The former head of one of the most successful, one of the most internationally recognized brands in the world concluded that lessons learned from mistakes are vital to organizational success. The saying really is true. Failure really is the stepping stone to success. During his Hall of Fame speech, New York Yankee baseball superstar Derek Jeter took a moment to address the young people in the crowd, the next generation of baseball players. I was struck by one line in particular. Jeter said, quote, "Baseball is a game that requires sacrifice, dedication, patience, discipline, and focus. It's a game of failure. It teaches you teamwork. It teaches you humility." Now, you probably wouldn't think a sentence that includes words like sacrifice, dedication, patience, discipline, and focus would also include the word failure. In a world that seeks perfection, we may want to remind ourselves that improving every day is the key to a competitive edge, and failure plays an integral part of daily improvement. In the words of Derek Jeter, it teaches you teamwork. It reinforces humility. You gain that edge. Friends, in all my years on the football staff at Texas A&M, I never saw a player reach perfection. However, I did note this, that the truly great players typically had two things in common. Number one, they were not afraid to fail. And number two, they committed to learning from their failures. I took away a simple principle from this observation, a coaching point, if you will. Here it is. If you're looking for that competitive edge, regardless of your endeavor, build something into your day that forces you to be completely and totally honest with yourself. For you see, friends, nothing, absolutely nothing, forces you to be honest like failure. When you fail, there's no place to hide. You cannot escape. You either acknowledge it and grow, or you ignore it and decline. Most games in college football are played on Saturdays, which means the film session is the next day, usually Sunday afternoons. I used to love to go to the film sessions. We used to have a saying on the staff that tape don't lie. You know, a player can talk all day long about how he made sure that he made a particular block. Nobody else saw it, but he's convinced he made that block. But when you turn on the tape, oh, baby, tape don't lie. The truth is right there. Here's the point. Anything that forces you to be honest with yourself will cause you to come face to face with considering improvements. This is the birthplace of competitive edge. This is the first step toward true greatness. Whether an athlete or a teacher, an artist or a sales executive, an electrician, a pool builder, an educator. You'll never reach and sustain success without first experiencing the depths of despair associated with failure. Failure is the key to any kind of sustained success. Without failure, there is no growth. And the goal of life is to grow in every way, spiritually, intellectually, emotionally, physically. I want to grow in my integrity, in my character. Friends, I tell you, without failure, there is no growth. And we ought to be about the business every day of improving. I want you to note the following. Those who experience tremendous growth are not necessarily the most gifted. Listen very carefully. They have simply learned to exploit their talents more than their peers. It's something psychologist James Flynn calls capitalization. Flynn's theory is straightforward. Capitalization is the rate at which a society maximizes on the potential of its human capital. Societies, organizations, and teams that flourish are made up of those who maximize their human potential. And how do you exploit that potential? You guessed it, often through an acknowledgement of failure and making the necessary adjustments to grow from that failure. Legendary basketball coach John Wooden once stated that success is never final, that failure is never fatal. It's courage that counts. Courage that counts. The courage to get up. The courage to acknowledge mistakes. The courage to attack those weak areas. The courage to exploit our human potential. One of my absolute favorite stories was told by former NBA star Chris Bosh. He was commenting on the mindset of the late, great Kobe Bryant. First, the backstory. Just days after losing an NBA championship, Kobe Bryant joined the Olympic team in Las Vegas to begin working out for the 2008 Olympics in Beijing. Teammate Chris Bosh shared a recollection of one particular morning. The morning he learned the mindset of a true champion. Listen to Chris's words. Quote, I wanted to establish myself as a leader on the team by waking up bright and early, waking up earlier than anybody else. My goal was to be the first one at breakfast. I set my alarm. I made sure I was up by sunrise. I got out of bed. I put on my gear. I headed downstairs. But when I got downstairs to the breakfast table, Kobe was already there with ice packs on his knees, drenched in sweat. Kobe was not only awake before me, he had already worked out. He had just played in the finals a few days earlier. Meanwhile, I had been off for months and I was still exhausted. What he had done that morning was incomprehensible to me. That dedication he had only days after losing in the NBA championship was just startling, and it taught me something I never forgot. Legends are not defined by their successes. They are defined by how they bounce back from their failures. Oh, baby. That's a great story. Thank you, Chris Bosh. Great people are not defined by their successes, but how they bounce back from their failures. I recall the great actor Denzel Washington once stating that if you fall down 7 times, you learn to get up on the 8th time. You keep getting back up. It's been said that destitution has a way of fermenting resolve. I want you to look at your life. Look at where the great growth spurts have occurred. For me, every single growth cycle began with a mistake, with a miscue, with a failure. One of my favorite quotes on this comes from Michael Jordan, arguably the greatest to ever play the game of basketball. Jordan once said, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot, and I missed. I have failed over and over and over again in my life, And that is why I succeed. Oh, baby. I am convinced that learning from failure is the key to sustained success. I am less convinced that we make room for failure. So I want to leave with you one thought, courtesy of author and speaker John Maxwell. Maxwell said on one occasion, and I want to quote word for word, "The difference between average people and achieving people is their perception and response to failure." Let me say that quote again. The difference between average people and achieving people is their perception of and response to failure. Friends, nothing that I know of has the potential to impact our ability to achieve at high levels like failure. So, regardless of whether institutions or others make room for failure, I want all of us to consider working into our day a simple process designed to help us value failure by turning that failure into opportunities for sustained growth. I call this process PMI. PMI, purposeful, meaningful, intentional. Purposeful. My purpose every single day is to grow. It's to be a little bit better today than I was yesterday. Maintaining status is not acceptable. When I am purposeful, I am making a declaration to myself. I will grow. I will learn. I will challenge myself to be better today than yesterday. Basketball coach John Wooden again with a quote. Live today as though you'll die tomorrow. Learn today as though you'll live forever. I want to be purposeful. Second, I want to be meaningful. That's the second part of this process. Meaningful. In order to grow, I must become willing to be uncomfortable. Meaningful adjustments will produce discomfort and disruption. Remember the words of Benjamin Franklin, who said on one occasion, "The things which hurt instruct." When my actions become meaningful, I will welcome discomfort. I will allow for disruption because I will see them as necessary for growth. And the third part of the process, I want to be intentional. When I make a mistake, I must acknowledge, not blame. I must evaluate, not excuse. I must correct, not comfort. Acknowledge, evaluate, correct. I must be intentional when I'm face to face with a mistake. When I become intentional, I tell myself I'm willing to learn from my mistakes as opposed to excusing them, as opposed to blaming others. John Maxwell said, "Make failure your best friend." And while that may sound odd, just remember, failure is either your friend or your enemy. Learning from failure brings great benefit and value to your life. Let's continue this discussion about the benefit and value of failure in a future podcast. But for now, I want you to remember this one thought. Great people are not defined by their successes, but by how they bounce back from failure. What can you learn today from that mistake? By employing the process of becoming more purposeful, more meaningful, and more intentional, you'll discover that setbacks offer valuable lessons for improvement and growth. You can continue making the same mistakes over and over again, or you can begin improving day after day. It all depends on your view of failure. That's going to do it for this episode. Until we meet again, this is Dr. Rick, asking the most important question I can ask. How you living?
Are you ready to make an impact in your world right now? Do you want to stop existing and start living your best life right now? Dr. Rick wants to give you the first chapter of his best-selling book, Lessons from a Third Grade Dropout, absolutely free. Just go to www.rickrigsby.com/free gift to get the print or audiobook right now.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.